Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Treat Me Right conversation, brought to you, of course, by Women Heart. So, Treat Me Right is an exciting new initiative from Women Heart focused on advancing equitable, patient centered care for women living with and at risk of heart disease. Through storytelling, the lived experience, advocacy, and education, Treat Me Right aims to ensure that all women are heard, respected, treated, and believed based on evidence, not assumptions. Today, we're really excited to be speaking with Barbara Collura, a Women Heart champion whose story highlights just how critical it is for women to be heard in their healthcare experiences. Barbara was 57, active and healthy when symptoms of a heart attack were repeatedly dismissed, even with a strong family history of heart disease. And it took multiple visits and persistent self advocacy before she finally received the care that saved her life. Barbara is joining us today to share how she found her own voice in the healthcare system and what she wants other women to know about risk factors like family history and menopause, and how the Treat Me Right campaign will help ensure that women get the evidence-based care and timely care that they deserve. So thanks for joining us, Barbara, and let's just jump right in.
Oh,
Um,
thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this campaign.
Absolutely. And I know that both of us are on the road. We are both working as we speak. Can you please introduce yourself to us, and share with us a little bit about your heart journey?
Sure, I'm Barbara. I live in upstate New York. And as Selena said, I was a healthy 57-year-old. I had no risk factors for heart disease, but I did have a very strong family history of heart disease. No one ever really talked to me about getting seen by a cardiologist because I was healthy. And so no one ever talked to me about how important family history was. And I started experiencing heart attack symptoms on a Friday night. They progressed throughout the weekend. And by Sunday, I had all 8 classic symptoms of a heart attack,
Oh my goodness.
including the back pain, the jaw pain, very bad burning and pain in my chest, in addition to sweating and shortness of breath and exhaustion. And I did end up going into an emergency room on Sunday. And I had my EKG, I had blood work done, and they didn't find anything, and were ready to send me home. And I did advocate for myself and said, the reason I'm here is because I do have this very strong family history. My brother died at 44 of a massive heart attack. My mother died a year after she had had 2 stents placed when she was in her 70s. And my father had had 2 heart attacks in his 40s that he survived. And that's in addition to cousins, aunts, uncles. There was a lot of people with heart events. And I said, I'm a little bit afraid because of my family history. And they said, you're very healthy. We don't see anything. We're going to send you home. The next day, I wasn't feeling any better. I was feeling worse. I made an appointment with a cardiologist, and the cardiologist did no further test, said, again, I explained my family history, but he said he felt that it was probably anxiety,
Mm.
which never had a conversation whether I was being treated for it. Was I particularly stressed or anxious? Just decided I had anxiety. And I said, I did say something at the time that I was still really concerned. And he said, well, if it makes you feel any better, we'll send you for a calcium score in a couple weeks.
Oh my
So I
goodness.
went home from that. I had a very bad night, and I ended up having a heart attack that night, although I didn't realize it at the time. I went up to go to bed. I could barely breathe after walking the stairs. I ended up going into the guest room because I told my husband, I'm just in a lot of pain. I know I'm not going to be able to sleep. I don't want to bother you. So I had my heart attack alone in the guest room.
Oh my
Thank goodness it wasn't a major, it wasn't the widowmaker. And that week I felt awful, but I wasn't going back because everyone had told me I was okay. I was embarrassed to
Yeah.
go back.
Yeah.
And then finally I called my sister, who's a nurse, and I said, here's what's going on. I don't know what to do because I'm scared and I'm having these really bad symptoms. And she told me to go back. And she said, this time, don't leave unless they help you.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, once the cardiologist saw me the following day, they took me, once he looked at my chart, looked at me, took me right into cardiac cath lab. And I had a heart attack. I had a 99% blockage and I
Oh,
had 2 stents placed.
this is just so let's go back to the beginning of that weekend. And you said you started having, what were the first symptoms? And was it constantly getting worse and worse, or did it sort of, sort of ebb and flow kind of thing?
It just was progressive. Like every couple hours, I would add a new symptom.
Wow.
And I like to talk to people about that because a lot of people think when you have a heart attack, it's all of a sudden like a Hollywood heart attack. And
Yeah.
it really wasn't. I was out Friday night. I was at a concert. The seats were in the balcony. And I walked up to the balcony and I was really hard. I was really short of breath. I was sweating. And I just thought, well, we ate a really big dinner before we came here. So maybe I'm not used to eating a big meal
Yeah.
like that. And maybe that's it. And then it just sort of, then after that, I'd been really exhausted that day as well. Continued with the exhaustion, continued with the sweating. And then my left arm started to hurt. Then my
Mm.
back started to hurt really badly. And then I still wasn't thinking heart attack. And then it went into my jaw. And by Saturday night, the following night, it was in my jaw. And that was weird because you don't usually get jaw pain. And then the next day, the following day, that's when it went to my chest and I felt the burning and that this was serious.
Wow. Barbara, let's get to the Treat Me Right campaign. What inspired you to get involved?
I really, this shouldn't be happening to any other woman.
That's right.
And I'm really passionate about that. I always consider myself so lucky because I had a family member who was in the medical profession and she told me what to do. I was lucky I had her to call. I'm really lucky that I could afford to go back for 3 visits and do the copay. I'm really lucky that I had a support system and someone to drive me, that I didn't have to worry about childcare
Mm-hmm.
to do that. There was a lot of things that on my end worked out well for me. But a lot of women aren't going to go back. They won't go back after the first time.
That's right.
Or they're not able to go back after the first time. And they think, well, I'm just being, maybe I'm making more of it than it really is. And, I have heard stories about women who go home and have their heart attack and don't make it.
Yeah.
It shouldn't happen.
It absolutely shouldn't. I talk often about how anxiety should not be the off-ramp before making sure that really there's no heart disease or there's no heart event that's going on. And I think we take that off-ramp in the healthcare system way too early, way before we should. And it sounds like they did that with you as well.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that why didn't you ask me?
Yeah.
Why didn't you ask me? Was there some stress in my life? Did something happen recently? Have I ever been treated for anxiety? And what I'm working on now, I recently looked through my whole heart history and all my medical files, and I realized that visit, that cardiologist put anxiety in my chart. It's in my medical chart.
Wow.
So my visits after that, it's been following me, even though I've never been really diagnosed with it.
Right.
So I'm working on now, like, how do I get that out of my medical chart?
That's another point of self-advocacy, right? Making sure that your chart is accurate, so that all the doctors that see you are treating the appropriate symptoms. Um, Barbara, talk a little bit about when in the course of your care you realized your voice really needed to be heard more clearly. And what was that moment? What was that light bulb?
That's really hard for me to answer because I'm an attorney. I'm used to advocating for myself and others. And from my perspective, I wasn't being shy.
Yeah,
I was making clear that I had this family history. I was making clear that that's what brought me to the hospital, with my symptoms, that
yeah,
that's what made me afraid and why I was there. And just no one was listening to me. And it was a really lonely place to be when you think you're representing yourself and no one's hearing you.
yeah.
And I think I've learned since then that the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yes.
And I think I get more out of my comfort zone sometimes when I feel people aren't hearing my history or my symptoms. I don't like, I'm not the type of person who'll get real upset or angry or rude about it, but I will speak up more in the sense that if someone will say something and is ready to dismiss me, I may say, I'm not comfortable with that answer. Can we look into it more?
That's a great
Or,
phrase. Yeah.
um, I know that that's what the tests show, but I have to say my body's telling me something else, and I'm very scared. I think sometimes when you say that to people, that you're scared, like they're
Yeah.
more willing to help you when you say, um, my intuition is telling me, and I'm feeling something that is very scary to me, and I need help. I
Yeah.
need some help.
Yeah. So the Treat Me Right campaign is really focused on evidence-based care and clinical guidelines. So for you as a patient, what does evidence-based care mean?
Um, you know, I it turns out that my heart attack, because I didn't have the other risk factors, was caused by my family history, and I have a genetic condition called elevated lipoprotein A,
Yeah.
which is not cholesterol, but can sort of act like cholesterol. And it's the reason that many young, healthy people have heart attacks.
Yeah.
And what I found, I didn't find that out until I went to get a second opinion. And the doctor knew right away. He said, "We're going to test you for this." Um, None of the doctors near me knew that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, I guess I've realized through my journey that there's a lot of things that doctors don't necessarily know that patients do. And I think um, I've realized it has to be more of a team.
Yes.
That I don't want to be like a Google doctor, but I've realized that met so many patients who know so much about their condition,
Yes.
who are part of organizations like Women Heart and or other organizations or whatever illness you might be facing, and they know so much about it. And doctors, have to listen to us,
Yeah.
and not be sort of that. Uh, with my condition, I am in a drug trial, but there's currently, you're born with your number, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
no diet and exercise can't reduce it. And a lot of people, when I talk to if they have family history, I'll suggest the testing. And if they ask the doctor will say, "We don't want to test because there's nothing that we can do about it." And I wish I had known, because it would have given me another tool to advocate for myself when I did have my heart attack. And to me, it sort of means stop sort of the paternalism of, we don't
Yeah.
want to tell you these things because you can't really handle it or you
That's
won't
right.
understand it.
Well, and also, and with LP little a, you may not be able to address LP little a directly, but you can be much more aggressive then in controlling the other risk factors, right? Where you may not necessarily do that if you didn't realize or didn't know about the LP little a status.
Yes.
So turning to Women Heart, what encouraged you to take that leap and become a Women Heart champion?
I found the program, and the more I learned about it, it seemed to be a lot about educating other women and helping other women, and that was really the space that I wanted to be in. And I talk to as many women as I can about just heart, and um, so many things are just ignored or not understood about women.
Yeah.
And I just really wanted, I just didn't want what happened. I never wanted another woman to feel just as alone and afraid as I was.
It is such a true statement, right? That we want to make sure that women don't feel alone. So in that sense, how has Women Heart supported you in your own heart health journey?
It's amazing to be part, like, the women that I meet, and from my weekend
Yeah.
uh, as becoming a Woman Heart Champion, there's like a sisterhood there.
Yeah.
Like, when you talk to people who have had the same experiences, and it wasn't a criteria to be part of that you had to sort of have been ignored or misdiagnosed, but so many of us had that story, and so many of us had to fight to get the care that we needed. And everyone is so supportive. And I've learned about not only what happened to me, but I understand so much more about heart disease. I understand so much more about different conditions, and and especially stuff with younger women and
Yeah.
pregnancy that I never knew, that no one ever really talks to younger women about. And it's just, there's so much good information and correct information that I'm just happy to be a part of it.
I love that. So now that you've learned all of that and that's been integrated into how you deal with your own heart health, what tips would you offer to women who are struggling to speak up in their medical appointments?
Well, I have my favorite podcast is Crime Junkie, and they have life rules. And one of their life rules, so that you don't get murdered by a serial killer, is be weird and be rude. And when they say it, it's about, if you're in a parking lot and there's someone near your car, a lot of times we'll say, I don't want to make that person like feel that I think they're,
Yeah.
could be something wrong. So I'm just going to go to my car anyway. And they're like, be okay with being weird, and be
Yeah.
okay. And I think that I always tell women that in this space, it's okay if
Yeah.
if they're gonna, sometimes you think, well, I don't want them to think I'm pushy, or I don't want them to think I'm making stuff up, or that, I'm too aggressive. It's okay to be weird. It's okay to be a little rude to get what you want when you're not being heard.
That might be my favorite advice that any Women Heart Champion has given out there. That is so encouraging, because it's what I hear from that is it's okay to be you in the fullest way possible, which is wonderful advice in life. So with our Treat Me Right campaign, we're encouraging women to ask the right questions. So what are some of the key questions you now ask your providers when you have your appointments?
I think a lot of times, and sometimes because you have such a short time to meet with people, that it's important when you get a diagnosis, that you ask about, do we have any other options? Um, Even if it's something that, you don't do a lot, or that may not be available in my area, what are the options? And to ask about that, and ask, like, what is the next level? What happens if this doesn't work out? What am I looking? Because um, sometimes they sort of need to check boxes, and we're going to give you, you have to get through this step before you get to the next step.
Right.
And it's applied equally to all people. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. And
Yeah.
so if you ask, like, what are the options? And are you sure I have to go through this first option? Because, whether that's you're in a lot of pain, or, um, you feel like you may not really need to go through to that option. I think it's, um, and then also asking, like, what do I need? I know you need approval from the insurance company to maybe take this. Like, in our world, we deal with cholesterol medication, and then the new PSK9 inhibitors and
Yeah.
Repatha, which is very expensive.
Yep.
And just asking the question, if I wanted to do something or get on a drug that's a little more expensive, what are you going to need to show the insurance company for me to get there?
Right. Those are excellent questions, right? To sort of, because I think if you don't ask, they probably wouldn't tell you necessarily. They're just sort of dealing with it on the back end. But I think that's a really important way to understand all of the detail of your care, and that what goes into the decision-making process, which is really important. So how has being a Women Heart Champion helped you feel more empowered in your own healthcare experience?
Just know I have so much more knowledge, and just knowing sort of that, there's so many other women.
Yeah.
It's not just me. There's so many of us who have dealt with the same issues, and who, struggle to get answers, or who are ignored, and who are sticking up for themselves and helping other women do the same. That's really powerful. And just not to second guess myself.
Yeah.
I recently had an experience. I had COVID a couple months ago, and this time I was having some very weird. I wear my Garmin watch, and my heart rate was shooting up while I was lying down, and I was struggling to breathe. And
Mm.
probably normally, my first thought was not, I need to go to an ER. And I finally said to my husband, about every hour or so, my heart rate is really spiking, and I'm really having some issues. And I just didn't second guess. I wasn't going to be embarrassed to go because I was taking a spot in the emergency room from
Right.
somewhere else. It's like, I deserve to be here. This is
Absolutely.
okay. I don't need to second guess myself. This is serious.
Absolutely. 100%. Um, so thinking about all the women in the community and all the women who might be watching today, what takeaway do you want them to leave with?
I think if you're, as part as this part of this campaign, start educating yourself. Look at the resources on the Women Heart website. There's a lot of great stuff, especially this campaign. Connect locally with one of us, or with national. Find us places within your community that we can connect with other women, whether that's, groups you belong to, or, church groups or anything. Help us get out into the community with our red bags of courage. Um, and helping us reach more people will help empower you. Um, and just, talk to other women and get the word out there. It's not only about heart health, which, is our focus, but I think this Treat Me Right campaign can give people a lot of tools with whatever you're dealing with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the image I have in my mind, Barbara, is one of like an army kind of just like, rising up all around the country. And you're right about that feeling of not feeling alone. It's terrifying when you feel that. And then so to now be on this side of it and to feel like you have this army of women behind you when you're sitting in that doctor's office. It's a great feeling. I feel that same way, and I understand how you feel it. Do you tell your providers that you're a Women Heart champion?
Yes, I tell everyone.
Yeah.
I tell everyone, I bring in a bag and I say, is there anyone I can talk to? Can
That's
I talk to the doctors here? Can I talk to the nurse practitioners? I'll do a patient thing for you. What do you want me to do?
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that. Well, thank you, Barbara. We've spent 25 minutes just talking about this campaign. I'm so excited to get it kicked off with you. Thank you for everything that you do for women in heart disease. Thank you for sharing your powerful story and for your continued advocacy on behalf of women everywhere, really living with heart disease. If Barbara's story resonated with you, if you've ever felt dismissed or unheard in a medical setting, know that you are absolutely not alone. We are doing this together. Women Heart's Treat Me Right campaign is here to support you in speaking up and finding the right questions to ask your providers and in getting the care that you deserve. We all deserve. Stay tuned as well for more opportunities to hear patient stories like Barbara's, to access educational resources, to learn about clinical guidelines, which this Treat Me Right campaign will for sure delve more deeply into, and discover how you can support this initiative to make sure all women are treated right every time and everywhere. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.